Hi guys, it's Jess and welcome back to my channel. Today I am going to be giving you some spooky book recommendations. So it is that time of the year when everybody starts posting their spooky book recommendations, and I absolutely love watching those videos. I love spooky books. I love everything spooky and atmospheric in general, and I love autumn and I love all of the vibes that it gives out. And I have been reading quite a few spooky books over the past year or so, and I have some books here that I think people might enjoy. There is a bit of a variety here. There's some quite scary books, and then there's some not so scary books. We've got books about vampires, gothic horror, witches. Yeah, there is a mix. So, without further ado, we're going to jump straight into the list, and hopefully, you might find some books here that you have never heard before that you might like to read. Who am I kidding? You will have heard of these books before because I might have talked about them a lot on my channel. We are going to start with vampires. Now, I absolutely love reading books about vampires. I know it's so cliche, but it is true. I'm not going to mention the classic vampire book that is my favourite book of all time because I talk about that too much. But I am going to talk about a book that is a direct spin-off prequel to that classic book, and that is Dracul by J.D. Barker. So this is probably one of the best gothic horrors I have ever read. It is the prequel to Dracula, essentially. So, Dacre Stoker is a relative of Bram Stoker, and he teamed up with J.D. Barker to write the prequel to Dracula, and it follows Bram Stoker when he was young, and it just kind of talks about what might have been the inspiration behind Dracula. So there is some fact in here, but there is also a lot of fiction, and I think they merge the two really well. And yeah, I just really enjoyed this. It's got some fantastic atmospheric moments in this book, and it's got some quite gory moments as well, but it's not anything too horrific, I don't think, anyway. And I think they stayed very true to the Dracula myth, and to Bram Stoker's life. And I just had such a fantastic time reading this book. And I also love the cover, and I love how it's cut out like that. I just thought that was really creative, and that was one of the reasons why I picked this book up in the first place. And yeah, it's just, I really enjoyed this book. So I highly recommend this if you are a fan of Dracula. Even if you're not a fan of Dracula, I think you would still really enjoy this. It is written very differently to Dracula. It still kind of follows the format of it being written from journal entries and diary entries, but the language isn't as formal as it is in Dracula. And a lot more happens than it does in Dracula, I guess. But yeah, I highly recommend this one. Another book that features vampires that you might like to read is Jacoby by William Ritter. So this is a young adult supernatural story. It's the first book in the Jacoby series. I am yet to read the other three books, but I really enjoyed this one because it is just a lot of fun, and this gives me massive Sherlock Holmes vibes. Jacoby is a detective, but he investigates the supernatural, so he can sense things in people that others can't. He can sense when they are a vampire or a werewolf or a spirit or whatever. And we're following this young girl who gets a job with him, and she goes off on a murder mystery with him, and it was just a lot of fun. And yeah, Jacobi definitely reminded me of Sherlock Holmes. It is set in the Victorian period, which I really enjoy, and it's just got those fantastic autumnal vibes about it, and the great spooky atmosphere, and it's a very easy read. So if you want something that's a little bit light and a lot of fun, I highly recommend this one. And then another vampire book that we've got that is very different to the other two is The Radleys by Matt Haig. So this is a contemporary supernatural novel, and it is very different to any other vampire novel that I have read before, because this is about a family of vampires who are living in the modern world, and they are trying to live as humans. Essentially, they're trying to blend in, and they don't want people to know that they are vampires, so they abstain from drinking blood. They try and have normal jobs. The kids go to school. What happens is one of the kids, Clara, she ends up accidentally killing a human because she's developing these cravings for blood, and she doesn't know that she is a vampire. Her parents haven't told her, and so she goes on this journey of self-discovery, of figuring out that she is a vampire. And it's just great to see how the two kids, Clara and Rowan, deal with this new information, and how their parents deal with it. And it was just a lot of fun. There is a lot of humour in this, and there are some really good scenes in it that would probably be very mundane in a normal novel, but with the supernatural element to it, it just makes it so much better and so much more enjoyable to read. And yeah, I really enjoyed this one. So we're going to move on to Ghosts now, and sticking with Matt Haig, we have got The Dead Fathers Club, and this is probably one of the best novels he has ever written. I love this book with all of my heart. It is so good. So this is a Shakespeare retelling. Is it? I think it's Hamlet. I can't remember exactly. But this is about a young boy called Philip. He lives in a pub with his mum and dad, and his dad dies very unexpectedly in a car accident. And then one night, his dad's ghost appears to him and says he's part of the Dead Fathers Club, which is this club of ghosts. He tries to convince Philip that it was his uncle who killed his dad, and so Philip then goes on a little mission to try and get revenge and kill his uncle, and he's got the ghost of his dad talking to him the whole time. And this book was so good. It was such a roller coaster, but I had the best time, and it is a very quick read. I will say that this book might not be for everyone, because it is written without proper punctuation or spelling. There's no quotation marks and things like that. It is written from the point of view of Philip, and it is written how an 11-year-old kid would probably write something. And I know that would annoy a lot of people, and I normally don't like it when there's not punctuation or speech marks or whatever, but it really worked for this. It made it seem more believable, that this is an account of an 11-year-old boy's adventure, and this is what he wrote in his diary or whatever. I don't know, but I just really love this book. So if you want a really fun ghost story, if you want to read ghost stories but you're a bit too much of a chicken, like I am sometimes, then this one's perfect, because it's not scary at all. It's just exciting, and it will make you laugh. So sticking with ghosts, we have got this little beauty here, Home Before Dark by Riley Sager. So I talked about this book a little bit in a couple of videos previously this year because I read this back in May? I can't remember. But I did read it this year, and this is one of the best thrillers I have read so far this year, and probably one of the best haunted house books I have read in a while. So this is about a woman who inherits the House of Horrors from her father after her father's death. And when she was younger, something happened in this house that caused the family to leave, and her dad wrote a whole book on it, and it's really famous. People know it as the House of Horrors, and she's kind of just lived her life being associated with the House of Horrors. So when she goes back to the house to renovate it in the event of hoping to sell it, things start to happen that start making her question what actually happened when she was younger. And it's told from two perspectives. So the perspective of the woman Maggie, and then we also get to read chapters on from her dad's book, and seeing what he said happened. And honestly, I had no idea where this book was going to go. So I was very pleasantly surprised by the ending. There is some fantastic plot twists in this. But I just loved how it was written, and I loved the inclusion of all of these ghostly goings on, and you're not quite sure what is real and what is not. I really, really enjoyed it so much. So please go and read this one if you haven't, because it is a really, really strong haunted house novel, and I promise you, you will not be disappointed. And then another ghostly book, which I am going to recommend because it's a very light ghost story. And it wasn't my favourite book in the world, but it has a really good atmosphere still and a great setting. And I think people would enjoy it if, they don't want to read anything too scary. Is Dark Matter, a ghost story by Michelle Paver. So this is set in the Arctic. And it follows a guy called Jack who goes on this expedition. While he's on his expedition, the people that he is with start to leave one by one. And it makes him suspect that something unusual is going on. And that's all I'm going to say because I don't want to spoil it. But just the whole setting of being out in the Arctic, in this remote, cold and eerie place, cut off from the rest of society, that's really creepy. And that alone, just makes the book more intense and more life-threatening, I guess. And when I was reading this, I did kind of think, gosh, how is this guy going to get out of this situation that he's found himself in? Because, he's on his own out there, and there's no one there to help him, and he can't contact anyone. But yeah, this is really good if you want something that's not scary. Because I don't think it was scary. I guess some people would find it scary, but I didn't. But it was still really enjoyable. And also the book is stunning because it's got these black and white photographs in it of the Arctic, which kind of adds something a little bit extra to the book, and you can kind of get a sense of the location and what they were experiencing at the time. But yeah, this was a delightful little read. And at times it does give you a little bit of a chill. So let's move on to witches. I actually haven't read a lot of books with the theme of witches. But one that I have read that I really, really enjoyed is a middle grade novel called The Whitby Witches by Robin Jarvis. So this is the first book in a series. And this is a book that I actually bought from Whitby Abbey when I was on holiday in Yorkshire. And this has a lot of myths and legends local to Whitby in this book, which just, it really, really did a lot for me. So this is about these two foster kids who moved to a new foster home, and they kind of suspect that the lady that they are living with is not all that she seems to be, and they start to discover some weird things going on. And one of the kids, Ben, he can see ghosts, and there is this kind of like creature prowling the streets of Whitby, and yeah, it was just so much fun. For a middle grade novel, I didn't expect a lot, but I actually came out giving this book like 4 stars, I think, in the end, because it was just really, really good. It's a really quick and easy read. And yeah, this book is just a bit of a mix of everything spooky. So, you've got witches, you've got ghosts, there's myths and legends, and there's vampires. And yeah, this one I just had such a good time reading. And if you are someone who reads middle grade novels, I think this one would be the perfect book for you. So we're going to move on to some graphic horror, and I only have one. And this is a book that I have talked about quite a lot, so you can skip ahead if you want to. But that is The Troop by Nick Cutter. So yes, this is a very graphic horror novel, and it is not for everyone. It does feature scenes of animal abuse, so just be warned about that. And it is, there is a lot of body horror in this. And it's not normally a book that I would choose to read. This is about these Boy Scouts who go on a survival adventure on an island. And then this man washes up on the island, and he's really not very well. And he's sick with a virus that then starts spreading across the island, and these kids have to survive the virus. And yeah, this was one of those books that I was very disgusted with, but I also could not stop reading it. Nick Cutter has a very addictive writing style, and he just really makes you want to keep reading, even though you want to stop. And yeah, this book just made me feel so many things. I was grossed out, I was excited, I was terrified, I was intrigued, I was angry. This book just made me feel a lot of things. And it was the first horror book that I had ever read where I just had to take some time after to just kind of process what I had read, and just get over it, because I had nightmares about this story. It did keep me up at night. So this is a perfect book for all of you out there who love graphic horrors, who love zombie-esque stories, who want something really gritty and intense. Really, really recommend this book. If you do want to get into Nick Cutter, but you're not a fan of the graphic body horror, then I also recommend his other book, The Deep, which has a similar sort of theme about an illness that is taking over the world. But this one takes place at the bottom of the ocean, and it's not as graphic as The Troop. There are still some moments in it that can be a little bit gruesome, and there is still some elements of animal abuse in it. But this one is very light compared to The Troop. So you might want to give that one a go as well if you're a bit too scared to read The Troop. So next we're going to go with some weird books, because why not, you know? October is all about the weird as well as the spooky. So we've got Split Tooth here by Tanya Tagaq. So this is an incredible novel, and I read this in one sitting. I wasn't expecting to love it as much as I did, but oh boy, it just sucked me in. And there is so much about this book that I want to talk about, but I can't because I will just keep going and I will just spoil it for you. But first, let's just talk about all of the really cool elements in this book. Like this here, where it shows you the alphabet of the language in this in the culture that this book is based on, and then we've got some fantastic illustrations as well. So Tanya Tagaq is a Canadian Inuit throat singer, and so there are a lot of elements of poetry and lyricism in this book. And this book deals with a lot of themes like motherhood and feminism, and childhood, and violence against women. A lot of really heavy themes, but it has a very surreal element to it. There is a bit of magical realism, and yeah, there were some really, really weird moments in this book, but I loved it. And I think the fact that it is based on Inuit culture and their connection with the heavens and earth and animals and all the stuff that they believe in, I think that makes it really magical and really special. And yeah, this book just follows a girl who's in an Inuit tribe, and she becomes pregnant, and it's all about her navigating this new part of her life and all that it entails. And yeah, this book was beautiful, but it was also very weird, and it's not necessarily spooky, but just the atmosphere that it has. Yeah, I think it would just fit really well. And again, if you want to read something that's weird and wonderful but not scary, this is the perfect book for you. And then another very weird book, which is very different to Split Tooth, is Bunny by Mona Awad. So this is a very popular horror book, actually. A lot of people have really been enjoying this. I really like this book. This is about, this is a dark academia, and it's about this girl who joins a writing group, and she gets invited to go to this kind of writing group club thing after classes, and it's very culty, and it's very bizarre, and yeah, I didn't really know what the was going on in this book, but the girls, they are doing some weird experiments that bring out some very weird results. So I will just say again, there are some elements of animal abuse in this book, so be careful of that if that is something that triggers you. There are some graphic moments in this book as well, but I just love how bizarre this story was, and it was very different, actually, and it's probably so far the only dark academia book that I have enjoyed. Because I do struggle with that genre a lot, but this one was just great, it was very intense, and it was just really weird, and I had no idea what was going on, and the ending was really well done, and even though the characters are really unlikable, I really liked them. So go and check this one out if you haven't. I think Mona Awad is a fantastic writer. I do need to read her next book, which was All's Well, but we're not here to talk about that one, so yeah. Alright, so we're on to the last couple of books in the list now, and these books are more just about the atmosphere than they are about anything supernatural as such. But we have got The Only Good Indians by Stephen Graham Jones. So this one actually, it kind of does feature the supernatural, and this one does have elements of like slasher horror in it, and this is all about these four men who, when they were younger, they killed an elk and her baby. And this is a fact that comes back to haunt them later on in their lives, and they are being stalked by this elk. And I love that idea of like the hunter becoming the hunted. And I preferred the first half of this book than the second half, just because the first half was more my thing. You know, it was very intense and there was a lot of mystery, and there was some graphic horror, which I actually wasn't expecting, but when it happened, I was really, really into it, and it was very shocking, and yeah, I loved it. So this is why I'm recommending that book, for just those moments alone. But I love the inclusion of the Native American culture, you know, and it just had a really good atmosphere. It was very dark and very brooding. There was something very elemental about it, you know, as well. And it was interesting, you know. The last half of the book I didn't enjoy as much, but it was very interesting just learning about the culture and the things that these characters believed in. So this is a really good book if you want something that's got a bit of a mix of everything, you know. But it just has a really fantastic atmosphere. And then lastly, we have got Pine by Francine Toon. So this is another book, coincidentally, that features a stag on the cover. And I realise I have a thing for books with stags, deers, elks, whatever on the front. This one is all about this young girl who lives with her dad in the Scottish Highlands, and her mum had died like a year or so previous, and it's kind of like, it's a very intense study on grief and how people deal with that, but it's also about community and how it affects the community as a whole, and there are other things going on within the community that kind of tie into the main plot. And this young girl, Lauren, she's interested in tarot cards, and people kind of suspected that her mum was a bit unnatural. And yeah, it's very hard to talk about this book without spoiling it again. But this is one of those books that you should read just for the atmosphere alone. You know, the Scottish Highlands, there's this brooding forest behind the house. You know, it's dark and it's eerie. I think it's shown really well in the writing. You know, there is this kind of foreboding feeling within the writing that something's lurking in the shadows and something big is going to happen. And I really, really enjoyed that. So this is another book that's, it's very light on anything spooky. Again, it's mainly just the atmosphere that gives it those vibes, but this would be a perfect autumn/winter read. Alright guys, so those are all of my spooky book recommendations for this year. If you feel like picking any of these books up, then that is great. Please let me know in the comments if you've read any of these books and what you thought of them, or if you are planning to read any of these books now that I have talked about them. I always love to hear from you guys. And also give me some of your own spooky book recommendations, because I always appreciate them. I love everything spooky, as I said. I need some more really good horrors to read, so if you've got any of those, then yeah, please let me know. I'm going to wrap this video up here. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Please leave a cheeky thumbs up if you like this video. Please subscribe to my channel so you can see more videos from me in the future. Hit the bell button so you don't miss any of those. And I will see you all in my next video very soon. Bye, guys.